So as scholars had reconstructed the Mayan long count calendar, and they had been able to correlate the Maya calendar with our own in order to come up with the correlation that the end of this 13 Baktun cycle did indeed fall on the year that we would call 2012. But scholars were predisposed to think that it was the beginning of this great cycle that had the most importance. Well, that's just not the way that the Mayan understanding of time works. The Maya look to the end of a cycle or process for the meaningful event. There is a prophecy that's involved in this 2012 end date, but it's actually anchored to this empirical, physical, astronomical process that's happening, and it is the galactic alignment. The December solstice sun is lining up with the Milky Way, and the galactic equator is really the target of this galactic alignment.
From the astrological point of view, or the astronomic point of view, it's a very significant date, right? I mean, there are certainly all these alignments, and the center of the galaxy, and the conjunction in Sagittarius, and all of these different things. There's no dispute about that. I mean, that's written into the way the clockwork works. Does it mean anything? I don't think we can say.
The galactic equator is that midline of the Milky Way in the sky. It's kind of like the finish line in this process. And the analogy that we can make is to the Earth's equator. And the Earth's equator, as we know, divides the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere. And there are distinct field effects in these two different hemispheres. We know that hurricanes and tornadoes spin counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, and they spin clockwise in the southern hemisphere. So there is a field effect involved in these two different hemispheres of the Earth. Well, any spinning body will also exhibit these kinds of field effects, and our galaxy is a spinning body. And the galactic equator, the Milky Way, basically is the dividing line between the northern galactic hemisphere and the southern galactic hemisphere. Now, our sun has been pointed, the Earth-Sun relationship has been pointed into the southern hemisphere of the galaxy for some 13,000 years. Now, this alignment on the galactic equator is sort of like the null zone. It's as if we had a bathtub on the Earth's equator, and we were trying to look to see which way the water was going to spin down. And we just, it's the null zone in the process. So at some point we're going to begin to enter into the effects and our experience on this planet of being oriented to the northern galactic hemisphere. When this happens, it's hard to say. I would say there's probably a 36-year zone of alignment in which we approach perfect alignment, and then it begins to wane, but then we're oriented towards the opposite side.
There's an argument some people put forward that because the central point of this time window, this galactic alignment time window between 1980 and 2016, is either 1998 or 1999, depending on which astronomer you speak to. But that means that these people say that the Maya were out by 13 or 14 years. But it's still, they do say that it's still quite an incredible achievement to see that far in the future with that kind of technology that they had. But even so, due to the information that I've discovered, that this information about, not just about the process, but about the year 2012 in particular, has been bubbling up from all kinds of different sources. And many of these sources are people that have had altered states of consciousness of various types, like near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, there's remote viewing, abduction, that is alien abduction, people taking sacred plants.
So I started my 2012 quest with John Major Jenkins' book, Maya Cosmogenesis 2012. And of all the things that John said in that book, one of the most interesting things is he describes the Maya conception that at 2012 you have an opening of the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and a ladder emerges from the center. And out of this ladder emerges a serpent rope. And riding upon this serpent rope, like he's surfing the serpent rope, is an enlightened being who may possibly be Quetzalcoatl. Well, what John said, which I found so interesting, is he said that you can take out, he thought he could take out the archaic Maya term serpent rope and insert the modern word wormhole, and you have what the Mayans are describing is going to happen in 2012. A stargate or a wormhole is going to open from the galactic center, and out of this is going to emerge an enlightened being or a group of enlightened beings. And so if you follow this serpent rope stargate connection and you go back into various sacred traditions, whether it be Egypt or Samaria or elsewhere, Tibet, you find enlightened beings that ride upon serpent ropes. And you see these same beings entering Earth through gateways. So I think we've got a real solid connection here that this serpent rope is in fact a stargate or a wormhole. And what I marvel at is the way that modern science and the ancient Maya concepts are starting to match. Researchers talk about the stargate or wormhole as the apex of our science, and that if we can get a hold of this stargate science, it will literally lead to our salvation. They use religious terms in that sense. And if we don't get this stargate connection, then we have to start all over. And they talk about this is the most dangerous moment. This is the moment where we either get it or we don't. And so this is why this Maya conception is so important to me.
Alchemists in ancient Europe had a 13-sign zodiac. This 13-sign zodiac was based on the lunar cycle, 28-day months, 13 months a year, as opposed to our 12-month calendar that we have now. So I guess this begs the question, if we have 12 months, we have 12 signs in the zodiac, what was the name of this 13th month or this 13th sign? This is where the answer gets really fascinating, because the 13th sign of the zodiac was called Ophiuchus. It's a constellation in the sky, and it lies between the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpio. What is really fascinating about this is that is exactly where the center of the galaxy lies. So Ophiuchus, or the serpent holder, is the center of the galaxy. It is the secret sign of the zodiac. It's the sign that governs all the other signs. Just as Jesus governed the 12 apostles, just as King Arthur governed the 12 knights of the Round Table, so too does Ophiuchus, or the serpent holder, govern the other 12 signs of the zodiac.
The archetype of Quetzalcoatl is, integration. So, it's not about rejecting science and technology for intuition and the psychic. It's about really bringing those things together. And so, I think to get through this transition, we're going to have to take the, technical capacities of the Western mindset that have been kind of almost overdeveloped, but reorient them to dealing with the planetary situation. So the intelligence that goes into making an iPod or a cell phone or a high-definition digital video camera, take that kind of technical brilliance, but use it to preserve species. How do you actually create a wilderness corridor that's going to protect the handful of monarch butterflies that are still fluttering around? Or how do you restore wetlands and coral reefs and forest areas? So it's really, there has to be now that we've created the knowledge, technology and the information age stuff, we now need to go to another level and use a kind of depth perspective to where do we actually fit our technical capacities into the planetary biosphere, so that we hopefully not only just sustain ourselves, but ultimately thrive and flourish, as aspects of the planetary ecology.
Well, I believe that we are in the most interesting time in human history. Other times thought they were it. They're wrong. This is it. What we do in the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years will make the difference between whether we grow as a planetary civilization or whether we just are at the end of it.